Hello everyone, welcome to the Big Man MTG YouTube channel. I am a rather large man with an equally large love for the game of Magic the Gathering. Now, second video on the channel, I got something really exciting to talk about today. Before I get into it though, I want to put a spoiler warning here that we are looking at one of the face commanders from the Aetherdrift set releasing in February. So, I appreciate you being here, but if you are someone who is interested in not spoiling Aetherdrift for yourself, I would recommend clicking off and, coming back for a future video. With that out of the way, let's get into what the face commander from the precon looks like and how we're gonna absolutely do some crazy shenanigans with it. So let's get into the deck. I am dubbing this deck Rise from the Hashes. That's because we have a bit of a graveyard recursion theme going on, and I thought it played really nice off Rise from the Ashes because our commander wants to see things go into the graveyard from our hand, so we're going to be discarding in this deck. Let's take a look at one of the face commanders from Aetherdrift, Hashaton, Scarab's Fist. First off, this artwork is absolutely insane. I love it. The blue and gold armor, we got the staff going on here. Really cool artwork. It is a cheap commander too. It's just a 2 CMC, so for white and black, we get him out turn 2. Sometimes even turn 1 if we get the hand. Legendary creature zombie wizard, so we have a bit of a zombie theme going on. But his ability is absolutely insane. I can see this being played in CDH. It's, I'm not saying my deck today is going to be CDH with it, but he just seems like he has an insane ability that can really impact the game. Now, whenever you discard a creature card, you may pay 2 and a blue. If you do, create a tapped token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. God damn, that is insane. You're telling me I can discard a 8, 9, 10 drop creature, pay 3 mana, and get a 4/4 version of it onto the field? Like, it's around both timing for casting. I can get around, you can't counter this. It's just, I think this is going to be an absolutely insane ability. So with the deck I have here today, it's a lot of big bomb creatures. They're creatures that when they hit the field, they are causing problems for everyone. So I want to go ahead and take another deep dive look into this list with you. I will remind you guys, I am not an expert. I don't think I'm the best deck builder. I'm sure you can build it better. This is just how I think I'm going to want to play the deck and how I think I'm going to really enjoy it. So our Planeswalkers, we only have 2 in the deck, but both of them are going to help us discard our creatures to then activate Hashaton's ability. Let's start with Liliana of the Veil, which primarily we're going to be using that +1 loyalty ability to have each player discard a card, because that's going to help us chuck a creature. It's also going to help us keep our opponent's hands low, get them their resources away. So this is going to be a really good card early game to get our kind of mechanic going. The -2 could also come in handy if I ever need it, just to, pop an early game combo piece or value engine. So this is going to be a really good card for us. As well as Teferi, Master of Time. Now, you may activate loyalty abilities of Teferi on any player's turn anytime you can cast an instant. So that means every turn that's coming around, we're getting a draw, then discard. So when I talked about Hashaton being able to get around like timing restrictions for like casting creatures, this is what I mean. Whenever we discard cards on other players' turns, we were then going to be able to make if we have the mana, we're going to be able to make a 4/4 token copy of it. So this will help us, kind of really play our cards when we need it. We're not restricted to just our turn. This -10 might come into effect every now and again. You never know, because 2 extra turns is always fun. But this is a card that's really going to help us get our engine rolling, get our big creatures out when we need it. And you'll see, because we're going into our creatures next, we have some absolute bombs that when they hit the field, they are problems. So let's get into those. So thanks to the creatures in this deck and the fact that we're able to get them out so cheap, this is the highest average CMC deck I think I've ever built up to this point. And you'll see why with our first creature here being a big 7-drop with the Ancient Brass Dragon. Now, whenever Ancient Brass Dragon will deal combat damage to a player, we roll a d20. Whatever that result is, we return that many total mana value from graveyards to the battlefield for creatures. That means we're going to be able to help get our creatures back that we've discarded, get more value out of them. We can grab stuff out of our opponent's graveyards. This is just a really nice piece that the power toughness doesn't matter on him, so him being a 4/4 rather than a 7/6. We're just caring about him hitting, so that's going to be a lot of a kind of a theme with this deck, is that power and toughness don't really mean too much. It's more of the effect that the cards bring. Like this next card, Angel of Ruins. Flying. Sorry. Whenever she enters the battlefield, we exile up to 2 artifacts and or enchantments, And it has plane cycling, so it can discard itself to be able to activate our ability to get Hashaton's thing going and make it a 4/4, caring about just that ETB effect. Archfiend of Ifnir. This card I think is going to be an absolute bomb in this deck. This is the card, like kind of like a little secret commander that doesn't fit the color, like all three colors, but this is going to be disgusting for us. Because whenever we cycle or discard another card, we're going to put a -1/-1 counter on each creature our opponents control. It itself has cycling, so another way to if we don't have a discard engine, he can get out of our hand and we can get a copy of him. But since we're going to be looking to discard multiple times a turn, we're going to be able to keep our creatures low, our opponent's creatures low, and potentially end up destroying their creatures so they have no creatures. Archon of Cruelty. This is a big body that has an awesome ETB. Power toughness, again, does not matter, because whenever it enters or attacks, target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker of your choice, discards a card, and loses 3 life. Then we draw a card and gain 3 life. This is such great value, and especially when we're going to be able to, get a copy of it for 3 mana. This is going to really help us early game, mid game, and also help refill our hand so we can start discarding more cards. Avacyn, Angel of Hope. This is really just to protect our board. Flying Vigilance, indestructible. Other permanents you control, indestructible. Discarding, getting a copy of this is really going to help us, especially since I can do that at instant speed. We can make our entire board indestructible whenever we want if we have the mana open for it. Baleful Strix, any blue-black deck, I love including this. Just a good ETB draw, and it helps protect us in the early game. Esper Sentinel, both a turn 1 play or discarding him to Hashaton's ability also isn't the worst idea, because it'll have 4 power, so this is one of the cards that actually care about having that 4/4 power and toughness. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless the player pays X, where X is his power, so this will help us get a bit of card draw going as well, as people aren't really too keen to pay 4 mana, or even the 1 mana to prevent you from drawing a card. Ghostly Pilferer, whenever it becomes untapped, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card, so this is going to help us kind of fill our hand back up. When an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, which happens quite a bit in Commander, you're going to draw a card, so another fill hand. But this one just has the ability to let us discard a card, then have Ghostly Pilferer not be able to be blocked this turn. So this is a free card draw engine that we have. We have a few more in the deck, so we can help save our mana to activate Hashaton's ability. Hullbreaker Horror, an absolute bomb when it hits the field, and especially if you can start cycling in. I have ways to return creature cards from my graveyard to my hand, so I get a couple copies of Hullbreaker Horror. I am just bouncing everything back to their hand. Suddenly the field just becomes a trampoline park. Jin-Gitaxias Core Augur, 10 drop creature. Remember, you can get it for 3 mana. At the beginning of your end step, draw 7 cards, so we'll be able to fill back up our hand for our discards, and each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7. So, unless they have max hand size, they don't have a hand at end of turns. Kind of lets us freely do what we want to do. Kozilek, the Great Distortion. This is, I've never built an Eldrazi deck, so being able to include a few Eldrazi's in here feels kind of cool. Because we're never really ever going to get the cast ability off of it unless we're, desperation mode. But this allows us to discard a card with mana value X to counter target spell with mana value X. So, a lot of our creatures are big bombs, so we might not always be hitting them. But this also gives us an opportunity to counter some big spells from our opponents with some of our smaller cards. So again, just getting this for 3 mana is huge. I don't know how many times I'm going to mention that in this video, because I still can't get over how insane that ability is. But this is really going to help make us a difference here. Ledger Shredder. Flying. Whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, Ledger Shredder connives. So we're going to be able to draw a card and then discard a card. If you discard a non-land card, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. That part doesn't really matter. It's the draw and discard. And that just says whenever a player casts their second spell each turn. So this is another kind of engine that we can get on other players' turns to then, quote-unquote, pseudo flash in a creature. Metamorphosis Fanatic. That miracle cost can sometimes come in handy. Pay 1 in black. If it's the first card you've drawn this turn, you can cast it for its miracle cost. But whenever it enters, return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a lifelink counter on it. Which, in my mind, is I'm going to discard this Metamorphosis Fanatic, pay the 3 mana, make a copy of it. So when the copy ETBs, return the main Metamorphosis Fanatic. When that ETBs, return another creature card. It ends up being a 3-for-1 that I think is just plays really strong in this deck. Mondrak, Glory Dominus. If one or more tokens will be created under your control, twice that many tokens are created instead. This is going to double what we're getting from Hashaton Scarab's Fist. I know with a lot of our legendary creatures, it's not going to be too much of a factor because you obviously can't have 2 legendary creatures. But we have a few big ETBs from those creatures that can help us really turn a game in our favor. Being able to still just make 2 4/4s every time we do the ability is going to really put us a good amount of power on board. Nezahal, Primal Tide. This card is disgusting in this deck. Spell can't be countered. We're never casting it. I'll tell you that straight out. Unless we're in a pinch, we're not paying 7 mana for it. We're just going to try and get the 3 mana. You have no max hand size. Awesome. We can, draw as many cards as we need. Discard fodder. Really great to get our engine going. Whenever opponent casts a non-creature spell, draw a card. This is going to help fill our hand. And it has a free discard 3 cards to exile him and then return to the battlefield tap under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. This is going to help us discard cards, draw cards. This is a really good piece in this deck. Priest of Fell Rights. This is one I'm on the fence about keeping right now. Like I said, I'm still in the process of deck building, tweaking out things, but being able to tap, pay 3 life, and sacrifice Priest of Fell Rights, then return any creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield is really nice. The fact that you can only activate it as a sorcery, you kind of leave it up there as this needs to be killed now. If it doesn't kill, it's great, but I feel like it's too big of a target, especially when the graveyard is full of pretty big bombs. So this one is, like I said, on the fence right now, but still a really good effect for what it is. Psychic Frog. Whenever Psychic Frog deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, draw a card. This is going to help us, get some 1/1 counter, to fill our hand. And then its discard allows us to discard a card to put a 1/1 counter on them. So another free discard that has actually a pretty good effect for the deck. That is going to allow us to discard a card whenever we want. We don't have to wait on another effect. We can do it at any time we need to. Rafine, Scheming Seer. This is from Nuke Penna. Flying Ward 1, whenever you attack, target attacking creature connives X, where X is the number of attacking creatures. So we saw Legend Shredder with a connive. This is just allowing us to connive again, draw X cards and discard X cards, fill a hand, toss cards we need, which is really awesome. Then we get to put counters on our creatures to buff them a little bit. This allows us for any target attacking creature to do that. So that is really good for our deck. Shadowgrant Archfiend. This is a card again I'm on the fence about keeping in, just like the Priest of Fell Rights. Whenever ETBs, each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. You gain life equal to the greatest power among creatures sacrificed this way. So you are hitting your opponent's big bombs. He does have his own little thing here for Madness, so in a sense I could discard it, activate Hashaton's ability, and pay the Madness cost, so potentially getting rid of a bunch of big threats on board. Pay 8 life, kind of tough, but if we're gaining back that life, I guess it's not the biggest issue. This is a card, actually reading it now, I'm probably going to end up keeping it in the deck. That actually seems pretty good. Shieldred, Whispering One. This is a bomb in this deck. Swamp Walk, doesn't matter. At the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Since we are discarding our cards, being able to then return them in the next upkeep for free is such a great ability for the deck. Then at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature of their choice. So we are gaining resources and restricting our opponent's resources. So this is going to be ones that we want to get token copies of, and then if we have to reanimate it, we will. Psalm Simulacrum. I'm not in green, so he goes in any deck that I don't have green because it's a little piece of mana ramp. Also, just dying, being able to draw the card fills our hand back up to discard more creatures. The Scarab God. Since Hashaton is making a bunch of zombies, this is going to go really well with the deck. This is one of the only kind of zombie synergies I have with the deck. You could put more in it. Honestly, there's a few really good zombies, but I want to have a more focus on just the big bomb creatures for this. So, at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. If we get up to a point where we have, 6-7 zombies, we're draining 6-7 life, and we're looking 6-7 deep for that next combo card that we need. 2 blue and black, exile target creature card from a graveyard. It doesn't have to be our graveyard, so we can hit our opponents. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. So we're making, it kind of has a similar effect, but we're exiling here instead of discarding. And then whenever it dies, you just return it to the hand at the beginning of the next end step. So we can potentially reanimate this later on, have it die, put back in hand, discard it, use our ability. So there's many different ways we can get this on the battlefield. Here's the second Eldrazi, Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. It's 10 drop, again, probably never going to pay the 10 for it. When you cast a spell, not going to be happening, but you get to exile 2 permanents. It is a 10/10 indestructible, for us will be a 4/4, and whenever Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger attacks, defending player exiles the top 20 cards of their library. Now this is resource restriction if I've ever seen it. Exiling the top 20 cards just on a swing is going to be great for us. Indestructible is awesome as well. This is a really, not a very important card to the deck. It's just a very nice thing to have. Verena, Lich Queen. This is a card that I'm very tempted to change with the other face commander for the zombie precon. It's going to be kind of like a game time decision. We're going to see how I feel about it, but it does, have a really great effect for our zombies. Because whenever we attack with one or more zombies, draw that many cards, then discard that many cards, you gain that much life. This is going to help us gain life. This is going to help us discard a bunch of creatures at once. So if we have the mana, we're potentially putting 2 to 3 token copies out there. You can pay 2 and exile 2 cards from your graveyard, create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. I'm probably, I'd probably never really use that ability too much unless it's getting rid of the cards that I can't get back, like my instants and sorceries, land, stuff like that. Last creature we have here, Vohar Vidalian Desecrator. This is just another draw discard piece. If you discard an instant or sorcery card this way, each opponent loses a life, you gain a life. Probably not going to happen. But that pay 2, sacrifice Vohar, then you could cast a target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard this turn. If we put in the graveyard, exile instead, activate only a sorcery. That can help us get back a couple of our big sorceries that, if we need to board wipe, obviously you can't counter with it because it's only a sorcery. If you need to return something, destroy a creature, this will help us kind of, be very versatile in what we put in our graveyard. So let's talk sorceries. Our sorceries are mainly going to be used to either A, discard, or B, reanimate. There's a few other ones that kind of board wipes, but mainly we are focusing on that with our sorceries. Agadeem's Awakening is a really good one for it. This is for 3 black and X. You get to return from your graveyard to the battlefield any number of target creature cards that each have a different mana value, X or less. Where we have a bunch of big creatures, we'll be able to get back a few. You do have to dump a bit of mana into it though, so it's tough. A lot of the times I kind of end up using the backside of it more than anything. The front's nice if you can use it, but this is going to put another land on the deck if we need it. Bone Shards. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature or discard a card. That is what we're going to be using this ability for, to let us destroy target creature or planeswalker. Again, like I said, we're looking for discards for our sorceries. This is going to help us both get value on discarding a card and destroying a creature or planeswalker. Damn, this is a card that since recently, anytime I play black-white, I'll put this in over Wrath of God, because if we ever need to just destroy one creature, it's nice for the 2 mana, or we can overload it for 2 and 2 white to then basically have it become a Wrath of God. Demonic Tutor. This is just going to help us search for a card we need. I don't think much needs to be said about it. This just helps us find our combo pieces, our big bombs that we need at any time. Well, at any time we can cast a sorcery. Living Death. This card is going to be great for us late game. Not so much early game, as our graveyards aren't going to be that full. But each player exiles all creature cards from their graveyard, then sacrifices all creatures they control, then puts all cards they exile this way onto the battlefield. This is going to be, with our graveyard being as big as they are with the creatures you've seen, we're probably going to get the most out of this one. It can also help your opponents though, so that's sometimes going to be a little bit wary about what they have going on in their graveyard. Just always be sure to check before casting it to make sure you're not bringing out, a game ender for them. Reanimate. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its mana value. This is going to usually end up costing us between 6 and 9 life. So it's a pretty big cost, but it has a pretty big effect being able to bring back those big creatures we've been discarding. Stitch Together. For 2 black, we return target creature card from our graveyard to our hand. So if we don't have the threshold, that's what I was kind of talking about earlier, that we have ways to return creatures to our hand and then discard them again to make another token copy. So this helps with that. But if we have Threshold, which is if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you would say get to return that creature card to play. So that it goes directly onto the battlefield. We don't need to worry about discarding it. We get to reanimate it for 2 black, and with our graveyard usually being pretty full, this is going to be typically a put to battlefield card. Toxic Deluge. As an additional cast a cost spell, pay X life. All creatures get -X till end of turn. This is our, another board wipe for us. We can, if we name 3 life, we're getting rid of a lot of our opponent's stuff, but kind of keeping our own because our zombies are 4/4s. We would end up killing our commander, but we're keeping an army of 4/4s alive, so it's kind of like a give and take situation. Victimize. I put this card in every black deck because I think it's just such a good effect. You get to choose 2 target creature cards in your graveyard. You get to sacrifice a creature, and if you do, return the chosen cards to the battlefield. So you're getting a 2-for-1 situation going. We sacrifice one of the token copies we made. If we have 2 big creatures in the graveyard, we either return those to the battlefield. So this is just a really good card in any reanimator type deck. Windfall. This is a card that, again, talking about discards. Each player is going to discard their hand, then draw a card equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So not only are we getting the discard to activate Hashaton, we're probably going to be filling up our hand because I typically only play Windfall when I'm kind of behind or have a low hand. I don't like being the player with the most cards in hand. So this is going to be good to help us get our engine going. Let's get into our instance. Crush Contraband. Choose one or both. Exile target artifact or enchantment. Exile target artifact or exile target enchantment. I like this card because it's instant speed. Get rid of 2 potential problems on the board. You are kind of restricted that it says it's one of each, not one or the other of each. So this is just a way to kind of control our opponent's board where we aren't in the greatest colors to deal with artifacts or enchantments. Cyclonic Rift. This is our one-sided board wipe usually. In a pinch, it can be used to just return a single target, but most importantly, we want to overload that for 7 mana to return everything to our opponent's hands. Typically, I love playing this on the end step of the opponent that's before me. So that means everybody's board's wiped. You get basically free reign to swing where you need to. Dovin's Veto, a very good counter spell for non-creature spells because it can't be countered. So this is going to make sure that if something, if some issue is about to hit the board, we can make sure it doesn't. Faithful Mending. But for white and blue, you gain 2 life, draw 2 cards, and discard 2 cards. So when I say instance, I don't know why I said that. When we're talking about being able to discard at instant speed, this is a great card that helps us over our being able to discard when we need. Draw 2 cards, gain 2 life, sure, whatever, but that discard 2 at any time allows us to then flash. I guess it wouldn't be flash out, but we can use Hashaton's ability to then make copies of those discarded cards. Fierce Guardianship. I put this in every blue deck. It's just too good to, say we counter a removal or some of their mana rocks early game if we really want to make sure they're behind. I just like putting this in anything blue, especially because I like cast for free. Another cast for free card, Flawless Maneuver. I think this art is the Captain America Secret Lair. Creature control gain indestructible to end of turn. So the last one was protection for 1 spell. This one kind of gives protection for our creatures and being able to make sure that we don't die or we don't get wiped out by a board wipe. Or we can, if we swing, we can make sure that nothing of ours is going to die. Frantic Search. This card is a great card to get discarded at instant speed. Draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, untap up to 3 lands. Essentially, the way I read that is draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards for free. Because the 3 mana that you're going to put into it, you're going to untap and have that mana to then activate Hashaton's ability right away. Mana Drain. Another card that if I'm playing blue, I want it in the deck. This is going to give us colorless mana that can then help us, use Hashaton's ability. Or, if we counter something big enough, we could potentially cast one of our giant Eldrazi's or one of our big other creature spells. Source of Plowshare, a card that I believe belongs in every white deck. Exile target creature card, or exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. It's just such a good removal spell that exiles. Sure, they gain life, but You know, life is just another resource in the game. I'll happily give you 4 or 5 life just to get rid of a problem on the board. Nefarious Protection. Until your next turn, your life total can't change, and you gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out. This is one of the best white cards that I think I play in most of my white decks. This just helps protect your board from board wipes, from, you know, anybody trying to mess with any of your enchantments, artifacts. If somebody's swinging, you know, lethal damage at you, this protects you. It makes sure you have another turn to at least try and get back into the game. Then you gotta exile it. For the longest time, I had the Japanese art for this card, and obviously they say reading the card explains the card, but when you can't read the physical card and you forget about something, it causes problems in a game. So just make sure that if you're playing Japanese cards, know what the entire card says. Last instant we have here, Void Rend. Spell can't be countered. I love that because, you know, again, like the Dovin's Veto is going to make sure that this resolves. Destroy target non-land permanent. This is our other way of dealing with, you know, if we have to deal with artifacts, enchantments, planeswalkers. Like, this is just, it hits such a wide variety of things that I think it just should be in every Esper deck. It's a pretty good card. So we have a good couple artifacts in this deck that's going to help us synergize with our commander's ability. Mainly Amulet of Vigor here, because whenever our 4/4 zombies tokens enter tapped, this is going to untap it, so we can have a blocker at instant speed if we need to, say, survive lethal damage. Also has some of our lands enter untapped, which is nice because we have a few tapped lands. It's for a 1 mana 2. This is going to be a great value piece for us early game and help us in the late game when we need our blockers, like I mentioned. Arcane Signet, don't think I need to talk about it. It's just mana ramp. I usually like to have between 5 and 6 mana rocks in a deck, just to kind of help, you know, get to our big creatures quicker, have more mana to activate our abilities, stuff like that. Chromatic Lantern fixes our mana, also taps for mana. Collector's Vault, for 2 mana, we tap, draw a card, then discard a card. So that discarding is important for us. We also create a treasure token, which can then help us pay for the cost of the creature we just discarded. So essentially, like, if you count up the 3 mana from Hashaton's ability, 2 mana to activate this, it's 5 mana, but that treasure token helps kind of reduce it by 1. So essentially we're looking at 4 mana for this card to create a 4/4 tap token of a creature we discard. Dimir Signet for mana. Grimoire of the Dead, legendary artifact for 4 mana. 1 tap, discard a card, put a study counter on Grimoire of the Dead. So we're with a deck that we want to discard, that's a good ability for us. But you can also tap and remove 3 study counters from Grimoire of the Dead and sacrifice it, to then put all creature cards from all graveyards on the battlefield under your control. They're black zombies in addition to their other colors and types. This is going to be huge late game. If you know, if we didn't win already at that point, this is going to help us just flood the board with everything that's been put in graveyards. And for us, it's going to be a lot of giant creatures. And again, just helps with our discard synergy. This is a really big bomb in our deck. Key to the City. This is just another good discard effect. So you can tap, discard a card, up to 1 target creature. You can't be blocked this turn. And whenever Key to the City becomes untapped, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. So it kind of has like a ghostly pilferer effect that's going to help us fill our hand. But for just a tap and discard a card, it's basically a free discard effect. We're going to be able to toss a creature to the yard, get our ability with Hashaton off, and as well make potentially one of our big creatures unblockable to get some big damage in. Lightning Greaves, it's there for protection. We don't really need to target Hashaton with anything, so typically that's when I come down to putting either Lightning Greaves or Swiftfoot Boots. That's my main thought process, is if I have to target the creatures or target my creatures a bunch, I'll usually go with Swiftfoot Boots. If not, we have our Lightning Greaves here. Matsalantli, the Great Door. I talked about this in my Muldrotha deck. This is just another draw discard effect that does really well for our deck. Typically, I want to leave this on this side. I don't really want to flip to the core. I guess if it's getting towards the late game, this would be nice to pay for our Hashaton's ability. So say we can add like 10 mana with it, discard a bunch of cards with some free effects, and then, you know, make 3 copies of it. So we might get to it in the late game flipping to this side, but that front side is just to get our engine going. Soul Ring, a mana rock. mana rock, and then we get into our enchantments. Starting with an Animate Dead. Animate Dead lets you enchant a creature card in your graveyard for just black and 1, so it's a pretty cheap enchantment aura. And then whenever it enters, if it's on the battlefield, this is a pretty long, complicated version of essentially put a creature card from a graveyard attached to this enchantment aura on the battlefield. It gets -0/-1. If Animate Dead leaves, the creature gets sacrificed. If the creature dies, this goes to the graveyard. It's a really good animate effect for us for really cheap mana. So essentially, say we discard a creature card, use the ability, make a 4/4 tap version. We can cast Animate Dead, get the main one back. Potentially have 2 copies of creatures on the board. I want to put this in every animate deck that I run. Just a really good effect for us. Anointed Procession, just like our Mondrak, we're going to be doubling our tokens that we're or creating twice as many of those tokens instead of the one that we're going to be making. Really good effect for us. Belongs in any kind of white token deck because this is just such a great effect that, suddenly we're getting 2 4/4 zombies every time we're activating Hashaton. Land Tax, this is a card I love to just put in every white deck. It mana fixes, it deck thins. It's a good all-around card for a very cheap mana cost. Also, I love this art. It looks so... dude, this is the skeeziest guy you'll ever see. He's definitely taxing us for something. But no, really good card to deck thin and potentially fill our hand so that when we go to end step, we can discard some creature cards to activate Hashaton. Phyrexian Reclamation. This is an absolute monster in this deck. So, black, 1 black to play, black and 1, pay 2 life. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So we're able to fill back up the creature cards that we've been discarding and potentially make more copies of them if we need it. This is just really good to kind of get our, if we want to get a couple Hullbreaker Horrors, a couple of our non-legendary creature cards, and we want to get multiple copies of them if we need them. This one is a really good card to help us refill our hand with the creature cards we've already gotten the value from. Smothering Type, this is a deck where I want to keep activating Hashaton's ability as much as possible. This is going to help us get a mana ramp and make us a few treasures. If we have Anointed Procession or Mondrak on the field, we're doubling our treasures. That means more activations of Hashaton. I know a lot of people hate seeing this on the board, but this is this deck isn't meant to be a nice deck. This is a full force. I want to create as much value as possible. This is really good for our deck. Tortured Existence. This is another card that's going to help us kind of cycle cards out from our graveyard back to our hand and vice versa. So you can pay a black. It's for 1 black too as well. Pay a black, discard a creature card, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So we are essentially switching creature cards. We're getting a discard to potentially activate Hashaton, or getting back a creature that we can then discard again to get more value out of Hashaton's ability. And the last enchantment we have in this deck, Zombie Infestation. For black and 1, it lets you discard 2 cards as a cost to create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Again, one of those free discard costs for us that will help us get cards into our graveyard out of our hand. So, not too much to say about the lands, as most of these lands are literally just there for the color. We don't really get too many utility lands, apart from saying, we have our Urborg, 2 Yawgmoth, Cabal Coffers. We have our fetch lands, we have our shocks. There's not too much to talk about except for right here. Cephalid Coliseum. It taps for a blue, deals damage to us, sure, but it has threshold. So blue and tap, sacrifice Cephalid Coliseum. Target player draws 3 cards and discards 3 cards. Activate it if only 7 or more cards are in your graveyard. So we saw a threshold card earlier. This is just another draw and discard effect that we can get on a land if we need it. Again, this is the only land that really has the effect of the engine that we want to run. So that is my Hashaton deck list that I have in mind. I'm not sure if it's a final iteration yet. I'm sure there's going to be cards that I see that I want to include, cards I'll have to cut. But this card, I believe, has potential to be the greatest commander release in 2025. It's going to be so exciting once it releases so I can start playing it. I'm going to start getting the card soon, so hopefully I can have it on release to start playtesting. Because who knows, even when I start playtesting, I'm sure I'll find a few cards that I think go really well in the deck, or cards that I'm playing that I don't feel I'm getting enough value from. that is the wonder of Magic, though, isn't it? It's just, you know, the first deck list is never going to be perfect. It's all about making those changes to optimize how it runs, how it feels, and I'm sure this will be a really fun deck to play. So, if you have made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for being here. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you saw some cards or saw some deck tech that you might want to include in your own. If you did, let me know in the comments. Let me know, you know, how did you like the deck? Do you think there's stuff I'm missing? Because I'm always open to suggestions. But for now, I have been Big Man MTG. I will see you in the next video. Thank you.